So today, in the House of Commons, there was a debate about a bill. And there are always bills going through Parliament. This one was called the Data Bill. And the Data Bill itself is neutral, or at least as far as I understand it, it's fine. Like, who cares? But a Conservative politician tried to add an amendment to the bill. So a classic legal word and politics word, you might know what it means, but basically they just added some bits on. And so the bill, it's a way of trying to sneak things in sometimes. Like you can sometimes sneak in a part that's not really related to the law, and then it gets passed, and then that becomes law because it's part of a bigger law, and then it's harder to change. But basically, the data bill itself is about trying to get a common record of people in the UK in order to make it easier to identify people, so that you don't have to use your bank in order to verify who you are. I'm sure there are privacy groups who are opposed to this. I'm sure there are some who are in favour of it. I don't have an opinion. I'm just looking at this one amendment. So the amendment was actually really bad. So it was Amendment NC21, and it was debated today, and it was introduced by Conservative MPs. And basically this one online ID, which would be in the UK in order to verify who you are. It's like when you want to try and sign up for something and they're say, oh, you've got to provide your bank details. And the reason that is so that they can then ask the bank if you're a real person. And the problem with that is then you're relying on private institutions in order to verify who you are. So the government wanted their own one. And of course, this Conservative amendment wanted to record sex only as birth sex. But also, it would record whether someone was trans or not. And this, who knows who would be able to get hold of this data, but it would basically be a registry of all trans people, completely violating any privacy rights we have, which is particularly scary for people who transitioned decades ago. But it does affect all trans people. There's no reason why any public authority should be able to have a list of all the trans people. That just could only be a bad thing. And it would also restrict which public authorities can provide sex data, starting with the General Register Office, which records sex at birth only. So yeah, this was a very gender critical anti-trans rights move, and it was actually quite scary. It's to a similar level to what the Supreme Court ruling was. The Supreme Court ruling has removed some of our rights, and this was set to remove some of our rights. So this is an article here explaining, trying to explain simply what it would do. So it would permit public authorities to record your, I hate all this terming, acquired gender as if they have a gender recognition certificate. Even then, it must be recorded alongside their sex at birth. Basically, they're just saying they're going to record your sex as only your birth sex, not your current sex. And then they're going to write whether you're trans or not next to it. Absolutely terrible. Public services, hospitals, schools, and employers using this data would be legally obliged to misgender trans people without GRCs, gender recognition certificates, which only 1 or 2% of trans people in the UK have been able to get because the system's so terrible. And they could affect healthcare, safeguarding legal protections. It would be trans people might be forced to disclose their private medical history. This is all tied up into privacy stuff. If this had passed, it would be likely in conflict with all kinds of European Court of Human Rights privacy things, which is originally why it wasn't put into the bill in the first place, and they've tried to add this amendment. But they debated it in the House of Commons, and this is where the Labour Party have power, and Keir Starmer's government, and Wes Streeting, and all those people. And we've had a bad run in the UK, you may have noticed, both in the courts and in Parliament, with them just doing horrible things against all the odds where you're like, surely they're not going to rule this way because it would be in conflict with like every other law. Oh, they've ruled this way. Surely they're not going to try and ban trans healthcare despite all the evidence. Oh, they've banned trans healthcare for kids despite all the evidence. And I was just feeling like we're just going to lose this one too. But it was actually pretty decisive. This was quite strongly opposed. Just less than 100 votes for it. Well over 300 votes against it. This is a big win for us. This is time to be relieved. Like, this would have been terrible and it's not happening. This isn't like we've gained some rights. This isn't any of the horrific attacks on us in the past have been revoked or anything. So it's not like a real celebration. But thank fuck. Like, it just seemed like there's something every single day almost. Some new nonsense attack on our rights. And we're going to cover another one later. But there's just constantly things. And it's finally a major one has gone in our favour. Which is great. We actually have a clip here of them talking about it, where they say that the government, not only have they got rid of this amendment, they're saying they're not even going to bother trying passing anything like this, which is great. So let's just listen to this little clip. I haven't seen this yet, and I've been told it's quite good. It's the House of Commons. It's probably not going to be good, but like we'll see.
New clauses 7 to 21, amendments 39 and 40. Let me start by saying that the government accepts the Supreme Court ruling, but it is paramount that we work through this judgment carefully, with sensitivity, and in line with the law. We cannot simply flick a switch. We must work through the impacts of this judgment properly, recognising that this is broader than data used by digital verification services, and I reflect the comment made earlier by the Shadow Minister when he said data accuracy is important. This is equally... yes, of course.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Trans people and trans-led groups have been very concerned by the amendment tabled by members of the opposition, New Clause 21. They've rightfully described it as an attack on trans people's rights and their privacy. Yeah. Can the Minister offer some reassurance that, as well as opposing this amendment today, the government will not seek to introduce similar legislation via other means in future?
Hear, hear. We're opposing the amendment when we're not intending to introduce similar legislation. As I said, data accuracy is important. This is equally true for any data used in a digital verification service. That is why the government is already engaged in an appropriate and balanced range of work on data standards and data accuracy. We're already developing data standards on the monitoring of diversity information, including sex, via the Data Standards Authority. Following a review, the Office for Statistics Regulation published updated guidance on collecting and reporting data and statistics about sex and gender identity last year, and all government departments are considering now how best to address the recommendations of the Sullivan Review, which we've published. This is the first reason why we will not be supporting this new clause or the amendment today. Quite simply, we believe the concerns regarding the way in which public authorities process sex and gender data should be considered holistically, taking into account the effects of the Supreme Court ruling and the specific and particular requirements of public authorities. By contrast, the new clause and the amendment would undermine the work the government is already doing. In giving the Secretary of State a new regulatory rule, they would undermine the existing processes that ensure compliance with the UK's data protection.
Maybe this isn't that exciting. Anyway, it was good to see someone speak up and be like, I've talked to trans people and they say this is bad. She's wearing a Trans History Week badge as well. We have some good politicians. We have some politicians who actually care and who have actually listened to trans people and who are like pushing our concerns. I'm not really a fan of what this guy's saying. I mean, he's like, we are welcoming the Supreme Court ruling and we're reviewing the Sullivan Review and all this kind of bullshit, gender critical nonsense. But it is good to hear them say this bill is not only not going to pass and they oppose it, but it's like conflicts with what they're already trying to do. So, I don't know. I think that is a success and we should be relieved. We're just going to have to take all of these minor wins as best we can. You can't only be depressed when we lose and then be like, oh, this was nothing when we win. Like, I think however much stead you put into how bad this would have been if it passed, you've got to imagine that, and then like the magnitude of that horror, and then invert it and try and take that like celebratory energy, because we're not going to have this one big moment where all of a sudden trans people are liberated and everything's fine, like the end of Star Wars or something. We're going to grindily and slowly win out over decades. And you have to take the celebrations as they come. Yeah, this, if you want to read about this bill, I'll put this in the description. It would have been terrible. Yeah, basically just a rollback of legal recognition of trans people, and it was defeated. So, hooray. And well done to everyone who wrote to their MPs and applied pressure. Like, we just saw a politician standing up and being like, I've heard from trans people that they don't like this. How would she have known that if she hadn't have heard from trans people? And sure, you might have a terrible MP who's like, oh, I'm a conservative dickhead, I fought this bill in the first place, I support Wes Streeting or whatever. Maybe even Wes Streeting is your MP. If that's not the case, then applying pressure might get your MP to speak out. And if that is the case, when they see that there's loads of opposition and passing a certain bill becomes a like total nightmare because they keep getting loads of pressure from emails and from constituents and people want to talk to them about it, they will get sick of it. Very few of them are true believers. Lots of them don't like trans people and they want to get votes by hurting trans people. And when they realise it's a massive hassle, they'll give up. So, everyone who wrote your MP a letter over this one, thank you very much. Amazing. Well done. Celebrate. Get some energy. And then we'll write to the next one for the next thing. Hooray!